right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. It doesn't look like we have too many people that are on our call line or logged in through the Zoom channel right now, but we are streaming this live on YouTube. We'll also be doing a recording. But if you are listening or just participating on any of those other means, I guess, welcome to the conversation for tonight. This is a question and answer session that we have set up on behalf of the city to help explain to potential applicants what our CDBG-CV business grant program is, and to help walk you through the application process, answer any questions that we can answer. This is not your only opportunity to ask questions. The application is not due until that first week of September, I believe on September 6th. So if you have any questions, feel free to call us at City Hall and pose those questions to my office, and we will certainly be a part of answering those that way as well. But we wanted to take this opportunity to try to interact live. If you had anything that was bothering you based on what you had read so far, we might be able to work through it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I do have a good amount of content I'm going to cover first, just to speak about the program generally. And then I'm going to switch over and show everybody some of the online components and where you can get additional information. And I will say that pretty much everything I'm going to talk about tonight is contained in the online instructions that we prepared on the city website. It's also on the online application itself. So if you're not watching this or don't see the video afterwards, or if you're just speaking with your friends or other business owners downtown, they should be able to get most of this information just off of the city website. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And then once I get through my initial presentation, I'll open it up for any questions after that. So the first thing I want to share is just what is this program? There are so many different resources floating around right now for COVID relief. It is hard to keep all of these different programs straight and where they're coming from. And so I think one of the best questions we can answer early on is, what is this program? And so CDBG is a program that is, it's a part of the Housing and Urban Development. It's part of the HUD program from the federal government. But this CDBG-CV is actually a supplement to their traditional funding that was made possible by the Federal CARES Act. So the CARES Act is that big relief package that the federal government passed that has a tremendous amount of money available through it for a wide variety of purposes, and it has been trickling throughout the economy since back in March, April, May timeframes when it was initially rolled out. So this is federal money. The State Department of Commerce was awarded the funding by the federal government to distribute through their statewide programs. And then the way that the state chose to distribute the funding is they had an open application round for cities to apply for grants in order to make this funding available to businesses within their community. So the city of Augusta actually submitted a grant application, and we were one of the cities that was awarded funding by the state of Kansas. We have $132,000 available for this program to be distributed as business grants. These are not loans, these are strictly grants, so you will not have to pay them back. And they are strictly for-profit businesses. Nonprofits, churches, governments, nothing like that is eligible for this program. This is exclusively for-profit businesses. And this is a different program from the program that the city ran starting back in March of this year. That funding was actually something called a revolving loan fund. It was also CDBG money, but it's from a much older program that we'd had in place since the mid-'80s, and we were able to repurpose in order to do loans and grants to local businesses. This is a completely new thing, okay? So what does CDBG-CV mean? So anytime you see the letter CDBG, what that stands for is Community Development Block Grant. when you're dealing with the federal government, anytime you see the CDBG letters, that means that there is some kind of income restriction involved in the process. And so for this grant program, your business must meet the income guidelines in order to be eligible to receive the grant. And we're going to talk about what those income guidelines are and how do you determine if you're eligible or not. We're going to do that a little bit later in the session. Okay, the next thing to know about this program is that this is essentially a reimbursement program for any of your qualified expenditures. This is not for revenue replacement. Some programs out there from the federal government may be replacing revenue that you've lost just by virtue of having such a bad year. This is not that program. You will actually have to submit receipts and evidence of expenses that you've actually incurred. And then the city who will be administering these grants have to determine if the expenses meet the eligibility requirements, at which point we can get authorization from the state to reimburse you for those expenses. Now, I will say, and please take note of this, that I am aware that Butler County is going to be launching another round of business grants, probably within the next few weeks. That program is also a new program, and it's entirely separate from what the city is doing, from what the state is doing, and the federal government are doing. And as I understand it right now, the intent with the Butler County Business Grant Program is going to be for revenue replacement. That isn't set in stone yet, but that is my understanding of how they're going to be awarding those grants. So whether you qualify for this program or not, I would say keep your eye out for any notices from the city or from Butler County of that grant program as well. And what you will need to provide for that is evidence of what your revenues are like this year to date in 2020 compared to a prior year. And if you're able to show revenue losses, then more than likely you're going to be able to qualify for that grant program. They have not announced the full guidelines for that yet, but just keep your eye out. That is something new that is likely going to be coming out here in the next few weeks. Okay, so let's get back to the program that we're here to talk about tonight, which is the CDBG-CV program. So in summary, this is federal money. It's federal money from the CARES Act that was given to the Kansas State Department of Commerce, who then awarded that funding to the city of Augusta. And now the city has a local process that we are using in order to make these awards to businesses. So now, with that background and knowing that this is a city process from this point forward, and the city is the entity that the businesses are going to be dealing with, let's talk about what that city process is. So the first step is that this is going to be an entirely online process. And we do not have a hard copy application. It is all done online. And the way that you access both the instructional guidance and the application is by visiting the city's website at www.augustaks.org. Once you get to the website, if you scroll down just a little bit, there is a section on the city's homepage called Latest City News, and you will see a big red logo that says CDBG-CV Small Business Grant Program. And there is a link on that story that says read more, and once you click that, that will take you to the primary instructional guidance for the program. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to be sharing my screen, so anybody listening by phone is not going to be able to see this, but you should be able to see it on YouTube if you watch it later. So give me just 1 second. All right, so what I have displayed on my screen right now is the city's homepage. So once you visit the homepage, if you scroll down slightly, you will see the city news section, and there's a big red logo in the middle of the screen. And when you click on that story, it opens up the instruction page for the program and also the link to apply for the application. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is to start going through what is on this page and showing you what resources are available, and then we will actually click on the application itself, talk through some of the guidelines, and help answer any questions regarding the application itself. But the instruction page starts up at the top with a series of links for the documents that you're going to need to answer your questions and also to fill out for this program. So the application is entirely online, but there is a component that you will either have to do by hard copy or print and scan yourself and submit to City Hall. And that component is the employee income certification form. It is one of the links up at the top of the instruction page, and you will have to have that filled out for all of your employees. The other links are primarily for informational purposes. So the top link gives you a full description of our program guidelines. The third link gives you a sample of what our grant agreement might look like when it comes time for the city to actually award the grant. And then there is a link to something called duplication of benefits. This is going to be one of the questions in your online application that you will have to answer. Because this is federal money, you are not allowed to get federal money from multiple programs for the same purpose. So for example, if you have qualified for the payroll protection program, and that program provided you federal money to help pay your payroll from March of 2020 to May of 2020, you cannot also apply for CDBG-CV funds to get funding for those same payrolls. That is essentially double dipping. That is not an eligible use of these funds. So the duplication of benefits document provides a summary of all of the various federal programs and some of the state programs out there that you may have applied for and may have got funding for. And when you actually get to the online application, you will need to indicate on that application if you have received any of those other benefits. And that will be a way for the city to follow up with you and make sure that whatever you're submitting for payment is not a duplication and is actually an eligible cost. Okay, so the application itself, the application is due by 5 p.m. on September 6th. It is an online application, so once you submit, there is actually a timestamp assigned to it by the software program that we're using, so we will know if you meet that deadline or not. After that date, the city has a grant committee that will be reviewing the applications and then make recommendations to the city council for award. As we go through that review process, if there's something missing or if we have any follow-up questions we need to get answered about something on your application, we will be doing it that week following the application deadline. So between September 7th and 11th, that's when our committee will be reviewing all of the submittals. And we may have follow-up conversations if need be, if there's something missing or we need a further explanation of something that you submitted in your applications. Our intent is to make recommendations to the city council on September 21st. And assuming that the council awards the grants based on those recommendations, we should be getting the grant agreements out to all of the various businesses that have been approved that following week, which will be that last week in September. And then once we have received signatures back from the businesses executing the documents, we will submit everything to the Department of Commerce for approval. And there's a few things that are going on in the background. The businesses don't have to worry about that. The city will be navigating that with the Department of Commerce, but we do have a few forms additional to what you all submit that we will be submitting as well. Okay, so with that, I want to speak a little bit to the process of review and what we're going to be looking at in these applications. So the first thing to note is this is not a first come, first serve application process. We did do the revolving loan fund earlier this year as a first come, first serve. So basically, if you met the eligibility requirements and just got your stuff submitted in time, we just went in order of who applied and awarded accordingly. This is not that type of process. The committee that was appointed by the city council recommended that this be a needs-based process. And so what that means is it is important for you to be thorough in your answers that you submit on your application when you are describing how your business was impacted by this pandemic. If you had lost revenues, if you had employees that were laid off and you brought back, if you were closed for any period of time, you need to do a good job in your explanation, because that's going to be the only information that the committee gets to understand your need, which is the primary basis on which they are going to be making recommendations for award. So when we get to the application and you see those questions in there, make sure to be explicit, take the time, don't rush to try to be first and get the application submitted. Do it correctly and be thorough and really explain your need, because that's how the committee is going to be recommending their awards. Okay, so with that, I am still on the instruction page on the city website. I'm going to jump down now and talk to the general eligibility requirements for the program. So the first requirement is the business must be physically located within Augusta city limits. It's not the Augusta zip code. It's not Butler County. It's you have to be located within Augusta city limits. That is also a state and a HUD requirement as well. This program is limited to companies that have between 1 and 50 employees. The third requirement, and this is the requirement that people need to pay most attention to because it's normally the one that causes businesses to get excluded, is the income-based requirement for employees. So in order to be eligible for this funding, at least 51% of full-time equivalent jobs retained have to be from persons that meet low to moderate income requirements. So if you have 5 people on your payroll, essentially, and you're saying that you're retaining those people as part of your plan of going forward and keeping your business open, 3 of those 5, so at least 51%, so 3 of those 5 have to meet the income requirements. Okay, so what are those income requirements? The income requirements are shown on the employee income certification form. So that's one place to find it, but I also have it a little bit further down in the guidelines. And basically, what you have to do is you have your employees fill out one of those income certification forms for their household, and it is a household number. And my understanding from the state is they are looking at adjusted gross income from the previous 12 months. It is not last year's tax return. It is the previous 12 months. So we're in August, so I would say go back from July to July, essentially. Now, that's not necessarily an easy number to get because you don't have a clean tax return to show it, but it's that calculation is more likely to encompass the downturn that you've experienced as a result of this pandemic. So keep that in mind when you're explaining to your employees as they're filling out the form that what they're answering the questions based on is the prior 12 months adjusted gross income, okay? And in order to meet the LMI requirements, they have to fall on that form. If you're looking at the form, the employee has to fall below the income shown in column C. If their household falls below that, they have met the requirement. And if you get 51% of your employees that meet the requirement, your business is eligible. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you are considered a micro business, which is a business between 1 and 5 employees, if the business owner meets the income requirement, I do not believe that you have to submit any of the employee certification forms. If the business owner meets the income requirement, you will likely not have to submit the employee certification forms. You will be considered eligible. And so that information is contained in one of the Q&A documents that the state prepared. And if you have any questions on that, follow up with our office later on this week or next, and verify if you run into that in your situation. Okay. The next item is, and you will do this on the application itself, you must provide proof of financial hardship. So there's a variety of questions that are on the application itself that allow you to speak to what financial hardships you have experienced as a result of COVID. Be thorough in those answers. And then the next item is you must submit the online application and then all of the supporting documentation. The supporting documentation, all that consists of are the income certification forms from your employees. So you will need to go ahead and click that link, download those documents, get them distributed to your employees. They can start filling that stuff out now. And then once they have filled it out, you can either scan those documents and send them to Susie Geiger, and that there is an email address in the guidelines that you can send those to. So I'm not going to try to speak to that and get the email wrong, but the email is in the guidelines. Or you can get them in hard copy and deliver those hard copies to our utility office Dropbox at City Hall. And I am comfortable with you delivering them up through, I'm going to say 1 p.m. on September 7th. So that's the day after the online application is due. It's the first day that we have for the committee to start their review. But if you can get the hard copies or the emails of the employee income certification sent to us by 1 p.m. on September 7th, I will accept those. Since September 6th is over the weekend, our utility Dropbox is not going to be open. Actually, the Dropbox would be open. We just won't have anybody manning that station. So I am comfortable with you dropping it off by that 1 p.m. timeline on Monday, the 7th. That does happen to be, I believe that's Labor Day holiday. So let's make that 1 p.m. on September 8th. My apologies there. Labor Day holiday, the city employees will be off. So let's make that 1 p.m. on September 8th as the deadline for your employee income certifications. Okay, and then the final requirement is that you do not duplicate benefits. And so on the online application, you will have to disclose if you've received funding through any other program. All right, in terms of what you are eligible to apply for, the caps on the program are a $30,000 grant for businesses between 1 and 5 full-time employees, and up to $50,000 for businesses between 6 and 50 full-time employees. Now, what I will tell you is do not expect that you will get that full amount of funding. We do not know the full demand of how many businesses will be applying, but in all likelihood, we do expect that there will be quite a few. And so the grant awards may end up being quite a bit smaller than what these caps are, but just know that those are the maximum caps. I just don't want everybody getting their hopes up and expecting that they're going to be receiving a $30,000 grant. The committee is going to review that on a case-by-case basis, and the actual awards are not only going to be based on need, but on how much funding is available and how they can spread that across the businesses that actually apply. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to speak to before we get started in looking at the online application itself is share a few more instructions regarding the process. This is something that no one had to do in our earlier revolving loan fund process, but they will have to do as part of this process. Is your business must have a DUNS number, DUNS. That is a requirement from the federal government and the state as part of this program. It is free for you to get. It is a relatively simple process. When you go through the online application and you actually get to that question, and I believe even on the landing page for the instruction form, there is a link to a video about the DUNS number explaining what it is. And then there is a link to the website where you can apply for yours. I spoke to a business in town this week who had never gotten one before, who had just went through the process, and it seemed relatively smooth and simple for them to do. I don't think it took more than 48, 72 hours or so for that process to get completed and to have a DUNS number assigned. But be aware of that. If you're a smaller business that doesn't do a lot of work with the federal government, it may be a very strange thing and you may have no idea what that number is, but it's a very common thing for other forms of government and larger contractors to have to get in order to get grant funding. In this case, for this program, you are required to get it. In terms of eligible expenditures, what this grant can be used for is working capital cost. There is a more full description on the online application that explains what that is, also in the guidelines. But from a working capital perspective, it is a pretty broad category that covers a lot of your ongoing monthly costs. This program is different from the earlier city program in this way. It cannot be, I repeat, cannot be used to pay city utility bills. The earlier revolving loan fund program, that was one of the eligible expenses. This program, the federal government with the CARES Act legislation passed a requirement that cities are not able to recoup lost revenues, and they consider a utility bill being paid by a business as recouping lost revenue. So city utilities, which is unfortunate for our community considering that we offer most of the utilities in our community, they are not an eligible expense. But if you have a gas bill or a telephone bill, cable internet bill associated with your business, those other types of utilities, you can submit for that. You cannot use this funding to do any new construction. This is not for remodeling. This is not for doing additions. It's not for building new. This is for retaining jobs and giving you working capital for your business to help you do that. You cannot use this funding to pay off debt. So if you have a mortgage out there, 20 grand, and you get a grant for 20 grand, you cannot go and pay off that debt. This is not going to dig you out of that hole. What you can use it for, as I understand it, and this is something that we will get clarity on from the state, but if you are making installment payments on, say, like a business vehicle, or if you're making monthly rent payments to a landlord for a brick and mortar store or something like that, if it's considered an installment payment, that does seem like it's going to fall under the working capital category. But if you have a commercial loan and you go and try to pay off a huge chunk with your grant, that is not how this works. That is not going to be eligible. So if you need any clarity on that in your application, please feel free to follow up with us this coming week. Okay. The final thing before we jump into the online application is to make sure that you have your tax history in order. If you have property taxes or some kind of tax payment in arrears, that will disqualify you from funding in this program. So you will want to make sure that your taxes have been cleaned up. And if you have any late payments, if you intend on utilizing this program to help preserve your business, you need to make sure to get those tax issues cleared up before you submit your application. Otherwise, you will be disqualified. Okay, that is all the instructions that I had pertaining to this application. So I'm going to jump over and actually go to the city website now for anybody that is following online, and I'm going to click the apply button. So when you go to the city website, you click on the link to get to the instruction page. There is a big red apply button in the top right of that page. That is where you apply and complete your online application. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what opens up after you click the apply button is there is a landing page for the online application that provides you this pretty much the same information that I just shared. It explains the program, explains the purpose of the program, routes you to the Kansas Department of Commerce page for any other frequently asked questions that you may have. It states what the application deadline is, and then it provides you a couple of useful links. The first link is for you to learn about the DUNS number, the DUNS number, and also a link to the website where you can get that for your business. The next item of information is the deadline for the program again. Submit your online application by 5 p.m. on September 6th of 2020. And then there is a link that says provide job certification forms for all employees. That link will take you to a PDF where you can download that job certification form. So you can start getting those submitted out to your employees right now and get that information from them well before the deadline. The next item is just a sample agreement. This may not be the final version that you see, but it should encapsulate most of what you're going to see from us when it actually comes time to execute some kind of document with the city. So that sample agreement gives you an idea of what you're actually agreeing to. Okay. And then the program guidelines requirements are stated again. I'm not going to go through all of them again, but there are a few more links that take you back to the income chart to show you what level of income qualifies your employees. There is also a link to a PDF document that shows all of the other federal and state programs that are out there that you may have applied for and got funding through. So you can verify on the online application if you are duplicating any benefits through that program. Then there is an instruction here, a guideline talking about the working capital requirements with a little bit more detail on what that is. Keep in mind that these costs can go back to March 1st of 2020. So especially if you haven't submitted any funding or any requests through other programs, you may have quite a few of your costs, including your payrolls, that are eligible for this grant program, and they can go all the way back to March of 2020. And then we have about a 12-month period from then for us to be submitting reimbursements on your behalf to the state. Okay, so the way the online application works is there is a series of pages, and so you will need to scroll through them and read everything and or complete the questions. And then down at the bottom, there is a button that says next. Once you click the next button, that'll take you to the questions that are on the online application. And I'm not going to go through all of these because a lot of them should be pretty self-explanatory, but I will skip through fairly quickly just so you can see all of the questions that are on the application. So the initial section of the application is just getting some contact information, basic information about your business, email, phone, where it's located, business website, owner information, so on and so forth. So this is just some general contact information for your business, who is involved and who might be signing off on the grant application when it's done. After you get through the first 10 or 12 questions, There's a few more identification numbers. These are getting a bit more specific and are speaking to some of the tax details and the DUNS number that we had spoke about earlier. You'll need to provide those various numbers, and that helps the federal government and the state categorize your business. So when they look at how the funds were awarded later, it'll help them organize their data. So there are links on the different types of numbers and codes you need to provide, as well as a link back to that DUNS number website where you can apply and get your DUNS number. All right, if you are watching online, I'm just filling in gibberish to these questions so I can proceed with the application. If you see a red asterisk after any of the questions, that indicates that it's a required question. So if you do not fill that out and you try to go to the next page, the application will kind of reset and skip you back to the questions that you did not complete before it allows you to proceed. So in order for me to move forward for the demonstration purposes, I have to fill out some of this gibberish. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that. Once you get down to around question 19 and 20, this is getting into demographic information. This is also just for the federal government's purposes for tracking, but these are optional questions. So if you choose not to answer them, the survey should allow you to continue on and fill out the remainder of the application. But if you don't mind filling them out, again, it does help the federal government organize and understand where the funding is going and what types of businesses it's supporting. Okay, I'm now going to hit the next page. And once you've hit next a couple of times, you are going to get into the meat of the application itself. So the front part of the application is just demographic contact information. The final part of the application is where you really need to lay out the detail of how your business was affected and help answer all of the eligibility questions that the city has in order to determine whether you qualify for the program. So one of the questions asks you about your working capital. And then you'll have a question on here asking about what other programs are you currently seeking, that maybe you have an application pending but have not been approved for anything. And then this question 24 is where it's asking you to go through that duplication of benefits guide and lay out any programs for us to notify us that you have actually received funding, so that when you submit costs, we can make sure that you're not duplicating costs that you've already received money for. It'll ask you some information about your number of employees. Again, this is just an organizing question for us. There is a limit of the total cap on the amount of funding. You can only have a certain amount per full-time employee. Again, I don't expect that a lot of businesses are going to be getting into that issue, because I do expect that the awards are going to be smaller than what the caps say, but I don't know that for sure until we start getting applications in. It's a question that asks you for average wage of employee, so you can calculate that off of your business information. Few more questions about retaining employees, payroll, gross revenue, and cost of goods sold. These questions 29 and 30 about gross revenue and cost of goods sold were specific questions that were added at the direction of the Department of Commerce after they got additional guidelines from HUD. So I am not an expert in business finances. So if you have any questions on what the gross revenue and cost of goods sold are for your business, you may talk to your own tax people or whoever you're using that do some of your business finance when you calculate these different metrics for the business itself. I did provide, at least on the cost of goods sold, there's a quick online calculator that I found that'll help you plug that in if you're not familiar with some of those business metric terms. And then there is a question on here, yes or no, if you have a tax liability in arrears with the Department of Revenue or the IRS. Again, if your answer is yes, you are automatically disqualified. So find that out now, get your tax payments up to date, And if you know that you are out of date, or if you have any payments in arrears, don't spend any time doing this application, because that one matter will get you excluded from the program. All right, a few more questions about your bank, general description of your business, and then after you hit next from there, it takes you to the final page of the application. And this page is speaking to a lot of the criteria that the committee is going to be using to prioritize need. So the big business survey question, where it's asking you yes or no, a lot of these are the criteria that the committee is going to be looking at when they determine how to award these grants. So make sure to answer all of those. And then the final 3 or 4 questions on the application are where you need to be explicit and provide really good information on how your business has been impacted. Provide any sort of metrics that you can. This is your only opportunity to explain to the committee how you've been affected. So be deliberate in your answers, be thorough, provide all of the information that someone who's not familiar with your business would need to know what your financial state is at this point in time. Okay, so once you have completed all of these questions, and it seems like a lot, but there's a good amount of these questions that you should be able to zip through quickly. Most of your time is probably going to be spent on these last 4. But once you are done with all of these, you want to make sure to hit that submit button, and then you will get a screen that basically says, thank you for submitting, and you have been turned in. And once your application has been turned in, our program will timestamp it. So that's how we will verify that you have gotten in ahead of the deadline. And with that, I have gone through everything that I intended to go through from a guideline and application perspective. And I don't have anything else to share in that regard. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the meeting now to any questions for folks that are participating by phone or maybe watching this on the computer. We're going to go ahead and open that up now. So if you're on the phone, you're going to need to unmute yourself.
This is Stephanie Anderson.
Okay.
And one of my questions is, I know you said it wasn't for new construction, but if we per se needed like a storage facility that was already pre-made, is that out of the question too?
Explain that a little bit more for me. How are you using it?
We will to store the frames and boxes because we have no place to store it, and also we have no honey house to extract, so we're doing it in the house. So
yeah, so the way that you've explained that, I believe that that's going to be interpreted as new construction. It's basically it's basically a capital improvement or a capital asset for the business, and working capital is something different. So if you have inventory costs, if you have bills associated with business for your telephone, your cable, or if you have to pay vendors for certain aspects of your product, let's say in the case of honey, you're buying jars or something to store the honey. I think all of those things would be eligible, but what you're describing to me sounds like a capital improvement that would not qualify.
Okay, now since I've already submitted my application, can I go back and alter it?
Yeah, so we're only taking one application. So the applications are not due until that September date. So if you tell me that you want to remove that one, I can go into the system and just delete it off of there.
Okay, and then I just have to start over and alter it.
And you can start it over. I should be able to, if it would be helpful to you, I should be able to maybe just do like a PDF print off so you can see what your answers were and then send that to you so you don't have to recreate everything.
Okay, that'd be great.
During the CDBG revolving loan, there were a couple times where somebody just made a very simple change, and I went in there and made it. I don't know if that's okay.
Well, we did that last time. So this
Just
program,
like one thing.
this program, I would prefer just to send it back and let people do that. So,
Okay.
so the issue we had with the last one, doing it first come, first serve, and the way we were coordinating everything, I was totally fine with how we did it, because we did follow-ups with businesses and make sure that everything was compliant. So this one, I'm just going to bounce back to you, Stephanie, and let you fill it out that way. And I will get you the PDF so you can see how you answered it.
Okay, that'd be great, because a lot of it was focusing on that building. So, and I didn't know that it wasn't available like that. So, okay, that'd be great, because we still have expenses. I mean, the phone and we have to buy more boxes and things like that. So,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? I still think we only have just the three of us that are on the line, so I don't know if there's anyone else to submit questions. Do you see anyone in the waiting room, Susie?
No. Do you? It's a little. Yeah. No.
I do not. Okay, so Stephanie, you're the only one on the line, so I'll give you one last chance. Are there any other questions at this moment?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, with that, then I'll say I appreciate everybody's participation. Anybody that's watching on the YouTube channel or watching the live stream, we will make that video recording available so you can hear all the same information again. And again, if you don't want to sit through the whole question and answer session, what I'm telling you, all of this information is pretty much contained within the online application and the other PDF guidelines we have sent out. Maybe as a last bit of information, what I will share, and you will want to talk to whoever does your taxes and finances for your business, but even though this is grant money coming from the federal government, I think you need to be prepared to treat this as income for the business, and you will probably have to pay taxes on it as income. So that's not something that we really got into. No one really asked those questions during the previous programs, and I don't think we thought about having to share that information, but that is something that has come up in our conversations with the state. And so I want to make sure that information gets shared out there with you all, that you need to talk to whoever does your taxes and be prepared that this would be considered as income for your business. Okay. With that, I don't believe that I have anyone else in the waiting room. It doesn't appear that we have any other questions posed to the city right now. So I'm going to bring our question and answer session to a close. Thank you very much for everybody watching and participating. If you have any questions over the next week or 10 days before the application is due, feel free to contact the city manager's office at City Hall, and you will either get Susie or myself. Susie is my assistant to the city manager. One of us should be available to help answer questions regarding the program. We wish you all the best of luck, and certainly keep your eye out for the other programs that are still being announced. It seems like there's new programs announced almost daily anymore, but I can tell you that there is another program coming from Butler County that is going to be different than everything that we talked about tonight. And so definitely be looking for that one over the next couple of weeks if your business is still in need. All right, everybody, have a great night. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and we wish you the best of luck with your applications.